Welcome to Pimpy's Investment Chat, where we keep investment talk simple. And here's your host, Pimpy.
What is going on out there, peeps? All right, let's get back to Iraq because there's some interesting developments taking place. Some that could put Iraq in a very, very unique situation that they can benefit from. You know, what's that old saying that the Democrats use all the time? Never let a good crisis go to waste. Well, those words might come back to haunt them just a little bit, and I'll explain why here in just a second. Before we get started, though, do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button. If you're not a subscriber, please do so, because when you do, it helps out the channel, and I surely do appreciate it. If you're thinking about buying gold and silver, now is the time to buy to shine. Check out our friends over at Money Metals Exchange. The link is down below in the description. If you're a first-time buyer and you spend more than $100, use promo code Pimpy, P-I-M-P-Y, and you will get a free half ounce of silver. So before we get rocking and rolling, I just want to say, if you guys hear kind of a humming in the background, my apologies. The AC is acting up just a little bit, and where I'm at, 700 degrees. So anyways, let's get into this. This is an article that claims that the leader reveals the presence of signs of a political dialogue that brings together the framework of the Sadrist movement. The framework of the Sadrist movement. Interesting way to put a headline. It said the state of coalition, al-Rakabi, revealed today, Sunday, that there are signs of dialogue and understanding with the Sadrist movement. Now here's the issue I had with this. We always see these news articles that come out and claim that Sadrist is working with the coordinating framework to try to iron some things out. But then later on, you'll hear Sadr come out and reject the article. But heck, you don't even have to wait for him to reject this one. You can just see the actions that he's taken. There's no intentions of him working out with the coordinated framework. There's no need to. Take this article, for instance. Sadr announces the liberation of the Green Zone and calls on the Iraqis rise to change the political system. Does that sound like he's having dialogue with the coordinated framework? Sadr said in a tweet, the spontaneous peaceful revolution that liberated the Green region as a first stage. Does that sound like there's dialogue going on? If this is the first stage, that means there's other stages. It said the region as a first stage is the golden opportunity for all the people stigmatized by the fire of injustice, terrorism, corruption, occupation, and dependency. I hope that the tragedy of missing the first golden opportunity in 2016 will not be repeated. Yes, this is another opportunity to dispel darkness, loyalty to the outside, quotas, sectarianism that have permeated Iraq's chest since its occupation and to this day. So Sadr went on to say that yes, it's a great opportunity to fundamentally change the political system, the constitution, and the elections, which if rigged in favor of the deep state, will become the best free and fair elections. So there's something definitely wrong there with that translation. What he's saying is if the elections are free from being rigged, then they would be free from the deep state. I think it's interesting they're using the same terminology as we are over here. So it's hard not to feel sympathetic of what they're going through. We just watched ours go through the same thing, and the truth is coming out. Sadr said to the Iraqi people, oh, the proud and free people who love reform, democracy, citizenship, law, independence, sovereignty, prestige, and limiting arms to the hands of the strong, patriotical state that imposes law on itself before the poor and does not exclude the influence, militia, and the like. You are all responsible, and all of you are at stake. Either Iraq, lawfully among nations, or a vessel Iraq controlled by the corrupt. So it's kind of hard here because, again, the interpretation is sometimes jumbly. Basically what he's saying is, look, we have a choice. Right now is the time. There is no other time after this. And that is either we make a stand now against the corrupt system and demand change or make change, or you become imprisoned to it. The same could be said for all other nations around the world, including the United States. If we don't start making a stand, it's going to be too late. If these people grab control of this country, the whole world is screwed. Now you have Gutierrez calls for the immediate steps to calm the situation in Iraq and form an effective government. So who is Gutierrez? He is the Secretary General of the United Nations. But it's not because they care about the Iraqi people. No. Because if you look at these two articles together, you see the bigger picture. So this is Gutierrez, the Secretary General of the United Nations, telling Iraq to stay peaceful. But you also have the European Union is concerned about the potential escalation in Baghdad and sends a message to the Iraqi forces. Now, why do you suppose the United Nations and the European Union are concerned about what happens in Iraq? You want to take a guess? I'll wait. Yes, oil. This is where they're getting their oil from. If you're trying to really screw over Russia, how hard is it going to be if all of a sudden all hell breaks loose in Iraq and you're not getting oil from them? Now, don't get me wrong, they're getting oil from OPEC, but one of the biggest contributors to that oil distribution comes from Baghdad. If all hell breaks loose over there in Baghdad and for whatever reason the production is either stopped or limited, that is going to affect what happens over there in Europe. They're going to have to start catering to the wants and needs of Russia because there's nowhere else for them to get their oil. They can get it from us, but we had some administration come in and screw the American people over, and we went from being the world's #1 deporter of energy to the world's #1 importer of energy. So this is the stage that we're in Iraq. This is why, as much as I don't want it, and trust me, I don't want this, I really, really pray for the Iraqi people, but I keep saying I think they're a lot closer to civil war than people think. Now, I didn't realize how popular Maliki was. I knew how popular Sadr was, but in listening to Nader from the Middle East talk, he's saying that, hey, pay attention, man, because Maliki has a pretty good size following himself. So if you have somebody that powerful, with that much influence, who's backed by a ton of people, ends with another gentleman who's very popular in Sadr and has a ton of people to follow him, this is the recipe for possible civil war. I don't want that, but this will help fuel it unless something is done. The sit-ins in Parliament issued their first statement. We will hold a session to choose Sadr as the country's ruler. Now, I do think that's an interesting term, ruler, there, because the holy man Sistani once spoke to Sadr saying, look, he prefer that people that are teachers and influencers of religion not take positions within politics. I don't think he'd be a big fan of this unless it is that Sadr did what he needed to do to grab control, make things right, and then have an election and stay out of politics altogether. So once we go into this article, ask yourself, does this sound like the coordinated framework and Sadr are having dialogue together? So the leader of the Sadr movement said on Sunday the formation of the coordinating committee for the sit-in in the Iraq parliament, which will later issue its statement, said that the news said that the coordinating committee for the sit-in has been formed inside the House of Representatives, indicating that the committee will issue its first statement regarding the organization of the sit-in and the demands for the sit-in in the coming hours. He considered that the popular demonstration and sit-ins include all spectrums of the Iraqi people and are not limited to the Sadrists only, explaining that the first demands of the protesters include choosing an independent figure capable of running the new government and a non-participation of political parties in the government. Oh man, there is a big part of me that kind of wants that here in the United States. I'm so tired of having political parties. I think we're at a stage now where people should be paying attention to the candidate, because too many people vote along so-called party lines but have no clue what the hell their party is doing. But here's the tricky part. Look at this. It said the leader, who's decided to remain anonymous, isn't that how it always is, stressed that the political figures accused of corruption will be held accountable according to the just and impartial law. So there's where you're going to see the coordinated framework kicking and screaming and fighting back. That's not going to happen. They're not going to allow it to happen, not without a fight. Their lives are on the line. It said there is no direct or indirect dialogue between the protesters or the political parties, although the article up above will have you think so. One of the protesters stated to the news that the demands of the protest were distributed on a piece of paper, warning them against negotiating or accepting a truce sought by those he described as corrupt. So we're going to find out more here real quick. It says, according to the clip, the leader of the Sadrist movement, Sadr, will be chosen as a new governor according to the session that will be held this afternoon. Oh, this is going to be interesting. So we're going to keep an eye on that because that's definitely going to be a sign of where we're going to be here in the next couple of weeks. All right, so hang time, people. Who knows? Maybe we could get something ironed out and get back on track here quickly. But there's no doubt about this. The European Union and the United Nations, they don't care about the Iraqi people. What they don't want is for an uprising to take place, civil war to break out, and somebody grab control of the oil or somebody halt oil production altogether. That's going to put them in a real serious pickle. Let me know what you guys think. Anyways, that's it for now. I'm out.